Meredith Hayes stood in the marbled lobby of the Grand Harbor Hotel, her palms sweating despite the aggressive air conditioning that made her wish she had brought a cardigan. The hotel was exactly the kind of place her high school classmates would choose for their 15-year reunion, all old money charm and new money polish. The kind of establishment that whispered rather than shouted its exclusivity. Through the tall windows, she could see the Charleston harbor glittering in the late afternoon sun, like sailboats dotting the water like distant promises of escape. She should not have come. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago. Embossed lettering on cream cardstock that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She had thrown it in the recycling bin, then fished it out 2 days later, then thrown it away again. The cycle repeated itself 5 times before she finally foolishly clicked attending on the reunion website at 2 in the morning. After half a bottle of wine and a particularly brutal scroll through social media. Now, standing in this lobby that smelled of expensive lilies and old wood, Meredith understood that wine-fueled decisions were rarely good ones, especially when those decisions involved facing Trevor Hammond and Cassidy Wright, who had not only been dating for the past 5 years but had just announced their engagement, with a photo shoot that looked like it belonged in a bridal magazine. The same Trevor who had dumped Meredith 2 weeks before senior prom, the same Cassidy who had been her best friend since 3rd grade. Meredith checked her phone. 20 minutes until the cocktail reception began. 20 minutes to either grow a spine or fake a family emergency and drive the 4 hours back to her tiny apartment in Asheville. She was leaning heavily toward the latter when she noticed him. He sat in one of the leather, wing-back chairs near the fireplace. Despite it being June and at least 78 degrees outside, he was reading an actual newspaper, which seemed both charmingly old-fashioned and slightly pretentious. Dark hair, good suit that fit him the way expensive suits did, strong jawline that suggested he either had excellent genetics or an excellent personal trainer. Probably both. He looked successful, the kind of successful that came with vacation homes and investment portfolios, and knowing which fork to use at his fancy dinners. The idea hit Meredith like a lightning bolt. Terrible and brilliant in equal measure. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly the kind of thing her therapist would tell her indicated she needed to work on her self-worth issues. But her therapist was not standing in this lobby, about to face a room full of people, who had all apparently spent the last 15 years becoming doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs, while she designed logos for small businesses and still used coupons at the grocery store before. She could talk herself out of it. Meredith walked over to the man. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with each step, a countdown to either brilliance or humiliation. Up close, he was even more handsome, with gray eyes that looked up from his newspaper with polite curiosity. There was a tiny scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more attractive rather than less. "I know this is going to sound completely insane," Meredith said, her voice coming out higher than she intended. "But I need a huge favor from someone I have never met before." The man folded his newspaper carefully, giving her his full attention. One eyebrow rose slightly, but his expression remained neutral. "I am listening." "There is a high school reunion happening here in about 15 minutes, Meredith continued, the words tumbling out faster now. "My ex-boyfriend is going to be there with my former best friend, who he left me for, and they just got engaged. And everyone else is going to be there with their perfect lives and their perfect spouses. And I just..." She took a breath, forcing herself to slow down. "I need you to pretend to be my husband. Just for 2 hours. 3 tops. I will pay you. Not a lot, because I do not have a lot, but I can give you $200 in eternal gratitude." For a long moment, the man simply looked at her. Meredith felt her face burning, could feel the horrible, creeping certainty that she had just propositioned a complete stranger in a hotel lobby, and was about to get escorted out by security. This was it. This was her rock bottom. She would go home, adopt 17 cats, and never leave her apartment again. Then the man smiled. It was a genuine smile. The kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look slightly less intimidating and significantly more devastating. "I do not want your money," he said, standing up. He was tall, at least 6 feet, and Meredith had to tilt her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. "But I will do it on one condition." "Anything," Meredith said. Then immediately regretted it, because that seemed like exactly the kind of thing you should not say to strange men in hotel lobbies. "Have to tell me the truth about why you really care what these people think?" His voice was gentle, lacking any judgment. "Not the surface reason. The real one." Meredith swallowed hard. She could lie, could give him some easy answer about not wanting to be pitied or mocked, but something in his expression told her he would know, and that the deal would be off. "Because for 15 years I have felt like I am still that girl who was not good enough," she admitted quietly. "Not pretty enough, not successful enough, not enough, period. And I know that is pathetic, and I know I should be past it, but I am not. I am really, really not." The man nodded slowly, as if she had just confirmed something he suspected. "Okay," he said simply. He held out his hand. "Bennett Cole. Nice to meet you, wife." Meredith shook his hand, surprised by the firm warmth of his grip. "Meredith Hayes. I guess I should be Meredith Cole now? For the next 2 hours?" "3, tops," Bennett said with another smile. "So, what do I need to know? How long have we been married? Where did we meet? What do I do for a living?" They settled back into the chairs, and Meredith pulled out her phone, showing him photos from social media so he would recognize the key players. "We have been married for 3 years, she decided. "We met at a coffee shop. You spilled your latte on my sketchbook, and I was furious. But then you offered to buy me coffee for a week to make up for it. And we fell in love over terrible puns and competing over who could name the most obscure indie bands." "I like it," Bennett said. "Specific, but believable. What do I do for work?" "Something impressive but vague. Consulting. Investment banking. One of those jobs that makes money, but no one really understands what you do all day?" "Strategic business consulting," Bennett offered. "It sounds important and boring enough that people will not ask many questions." "Perfect." Meredith checked her phone again. 10 minutes. Her stomach was performing complicated gymnastics routines. "And we should probably know some basic things about each other. I am a graphic designer. I work mostly with small businesses and nonprofits. I have a cat named Hemingway. I stress bake when I am anxious, which means I have made approximately 47 dozen cookies this week. I am an only child. My parents retired to Florida, which is exactly as stereotypical as it sounds." Bennett nodded, absorbing the information. "I have a younger sister, Amanda. She is a veterinarian in Seattle. My parents are still in Boston, where I grew up. I run 5 miles every morning because I convinced myself it makes up for my coffee addiction. I cannot cook to save my life, which is why I am very grateful for your stress baking. My guilty pleasure is terrible action movies from the 80s. Noted. We should probably have a story about our wedding, too, in case anyone asks." "Small ceremony," Bennett suggested. "Just family and close friends. We got married at a vineyard in Napa Valley. You wore a simple dress, not a big poofy thing. I cried when you walked down the aisle, which I was embarrassed about until my sister told me it was romantic." Meredith felt something unexpected, a pang of longing for this fictional wedding, this fictional marriage. "That sounds really nice, actually, it does. Does not it?" Bennett glanced toward the doorway where well-dressed people were beginning to gather. "Ready?" "Absolutely not," Meredith admitted. "But let us do it anyway." Bennett stood and offered his arm. Meredith took it, surprised by how natural it felt, how easily her hand curved around his elbow. They walked toward the reception hall together, and she caught their reflection in one of the ornate mirrors lining the corridor. They looked good together. They looked like the kind of couple she had always imagined being part of, but never quite managed to become. The reception hall was decorated with an excessive number of flowers and twinkling lights, giving it the atmosphere of an enchanted garden designed by someone with an unlimited budget. Round tables were scattered throughout the room, each with centerpieces that probably cost more than Meredith's car payment. A bar dominated one wall. Already surrounded by her former classmates who apparently needed liquid courage for this event as much as she did, Meredith Hayes. The voice was bright, loud, and unmistakably belonged to Jennifer Ortiz, who had been class president and had apparently decided that gave her greeting rights to everyone who entered. She descended upon them with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever, her dress sparkling with what might have been actual diamonds. "Oh my gosh, I almost did not recognize you. You look so different. And who is this?" "This is my husband, Bennett," Meredith said, proud that her voice came out steady. "Bennett, this is Jennifer. She basically ran our entire high school." "Only because someone had to," Jennifer said with a laugh that suggested she still believed this deeply. Her eyes swept over Bennett with an appraising look that made Meredith want to stand between them. "Husband, I did not know you got married. That is so wonderful. How long?" 3 years, Bennett said smoothly, his hand moving to the small of Meredith's back in a gesture that felt protective and intimate. "Best 3 years of my life." Jennifer looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but someone called her name from across the room. "We will catch up later," she promised, already moving away. "There is so much to talk about." "That was easier than I expected," Meredith murmured once Jennifer was out of earshot. "First test passed," Bennett agreed. "Though I suspect the main event is still coming." He was right. Trevor and Cassidy stood near the windows, framed by the harbor view like they were posing for another engagement photo. Trevor looked exactly the same as he had in high school, all-American and confident in a way that had once made Meredith's heart race. Cassidy was blonde and beautiful, her engagement ring catching the light like a small, expensive sun. They had not noticed her yet. Meredith could still turn around, could claim a headache or a work emergency or any number of reasonable excuses. Bennett must have sensed her hesitation because his hand pressed slightly more firmly against her back, steadying her. "We do not have to do this," he said quietly. "We can get a drink, make small talk with some other people, and leave early. This is your call." Meredith looked up at him, this strange man who had agreed to help her for reasons she still did not fully understand. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. Bennett was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. "Because about 5 years ago, I went to my own reunion alone, 6 months after my engagement ended badly. And I spent the whole night pretending I was fine while watching my ex-fiancée with her new boyfriend. I wished someone had been there with me, even if it was just for show. Sometimes we all need someone in our corner, even if it is temporary." Before Meredith could respond, before she could process this glimpse into Bennett's own pain, Trevor looked up and spotted them. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by surprise, followed by something that might have been curiosity. He said something to Cassidy, who turned to look. There was no backing out now. "Showtime," Meredith whispered. Bennett smiled, squeezed her hand, and together they walked toward the past that had haunted her for 15 years. And the elaborate fiction that was about to change everything, the walk across the reception hall felt like crossing a vast desert, each step taking forever and yet arriving at the destination far too quickly. Meredith could feel eyes tracking their movement, former classmates noticing her arrival, making calculations and judgments in the split seconds it took for neurons to fire. She felt Bennett's presence beside her like an anchor, solid and reassuring in a way that made her wonder how someone she had known for less than 30 minutes could make her feel safer than people she had known for decades. Trevor's smile was practiced and perfect, the same smile he had used to charm teachers and parents and scholarship committees. "Meredith, wow, it has been forever. You look great." The compliment felt automatic, the kind of thing you said at reunions regardless of whether you meant it. Cassidy stood slightly behind him, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that declared ownership as clearly as her enormous ring. Her smile was tighter, more cautious. Meredith remembered a time when she could read every expression on Cassidy's face, when they had shared everything from secrets to French fries. Now Cassidy's face was a polished mask, pretty and impenetrable. "Thanks, Trevor. You too." Meredith felt Bennett's hands slide from her back to interlock with her fingers, a gesture so natural that it almost made her believe they actually belonged to each other. "This is my husband, Bennett Cole. Bennett, this is Trevor Hammond and Cassidy Wright. We all went to Charleston Heights together." Bennett extended his free hand, shaking first Trevor's, then Cassidy's. "Nice to meet you both. Meredith has told me so much about her high school days." All good things, I hope, Trevor said with a laugh that suggested he knew perfectly well that was unlikely. His eyes flicked between Meredith and Bennett, assessing. Husband, huh? I did not know you got married. Congratulations. 3 years now, Bennett said, and something about the way he said it made it sound true. It sounded like he was sharing something precious. Though honestly, it feels like yesterday and forever at the same time. You know how it is when you find the right person. Cassidy's expression flickered with something that might have been longing or regret. We just got engaged ourselves, she said, holding up her hand to display the ring more prominently. 6 months ago. The wedding is next spring at the Middleton plantation. It is going to be gorgeous. I am sure it will be beautiful, Meredith said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Looking at Cassidy now, she did not feel the sharp blade of jealousy she had expected. Instead, she felt something softer, sadder. A mourning for the friendship they had lost, for the girl who had once braided her hair during sleepovers and known all her secrets. So what do you do, Bennett? Trevor asked the question loaded with the weight of masculine competition, the silent measuring that men did at gatherings like this. Strategic business consulting, Bennett replied smoothly. I help companies optimize their operations and market positioning. Fairly dry stuff, honestly. Meredith's work is much more interesting. She gets to be creative every day. Meredith blinked, surprised by the genuine admiration in his voice. Most people, when they learned she was a graphic designer, either dismissed it as frivolous or asked if she could design something for them for free. Trevor had once told her it was a nice hobby, but she should think about a real career. Still doing the art thing? Trevor asked, confirming her memories. That is cool. Very bohemian. I run my own design business, Meredith said, lifting her chin slightly. Small, but growing. I work with nonprofits mostly, organizations trying to make a difference. It is rewarding. That sounds wonderful, Cassidy said softly. And for a moment, Meredith saw a flash of the girl she had once known. The one who had cried over animal shelter commercials and donated her allowance to save the rainforest. I always admired how you stuck with your passion. The moment stretched uncomfortably, heavy with unspoken histories and half-healed wounds. Bennett broke it with practiced ease. We should probably mingle a bit, let Meredith catch up with other people. It was great meeting you both. Congratulations again on the engagement. As they walked away, Meredith released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Thank you, she whispered. For the thing you said about my work. You did not have to do that. Meant it, Bennett said simply. What you do matters. Creating beauty and meaning for organizations trying to help people. That is worth more than most of what gets celebrated in this world. Meredith looked up at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift in her chest. Who are you, Bennett Cole? Really? His expression became guarded, a wall sliding up behind his eyes. Just a guy helping out a stranger in a hotel lobby? But that was not true, and they both knew it. Before Meredith could push further, they were intercepted by a group of her former classmates, faces she half remembered from classes and cafeteria tables. Names were exchanged, hands were shaken, and Bennett played his role flawlessly. He was charming without being overbearing, attentive without being clingy, interested without being intrusive. He asked questions about people's lives, remembered details from the introductions, made jokes that landed perfectly. Watching him work the room, Meredith felt a growing sense of unreality. This was too easy for him. The way he navigated social situations, the confidence in his posture, the expensive watch on his wrist that she now noticed was a Patek Philippe, kind of timepiece that costs more than most people's cars. Strategic business consulting. The phrase suddenly felt like a carefully constructed fiction, much like their marriage. During a lull in conversation, while Bennett was at the bar getting them drinks, Jennifer Ortiz materialized at Meredith's elbow like a sequined ghost. Okay, spill. Where did you find him? He is gorgeous and charming and clearly adores you. I want all the details. We met at a coffee shop, Meredith recited, the story feeling more real each time she told it. He spilled his latte on my sketchbook. How romantic. Jennifer sighed. Then her voice dropped conspiratorially. Is it weird being here with Trevor and Cassidy around? I always felt so bad about how that whole situation went down. They really did you dirty. It was 15 years ago, Meredith said, surprised to find she meant it. People change. Life moves on. Very mature of you. Jennifer glanced across the room to where Trevor and Cassidy stood talking with another couple. Though between you and me, I think you got the better end of that deal. Trevor has turned into such a bore. All he talks about is his portfolio and his golf handicap. And Cassidy is so obsessed with appearing perfect that she is exhausting to be around. Your Bennett seems like an actual human being. Bennett returned with their drinks, a gin and tonic for her, club soda with lime for himself. No alcohol? Meredith asked. Designated driver, he said with a wink. Someone has to get us home safely. The dinner portion of the evening was announced, and they found their assigned seats at a table with 3 other couples. The conversation flowed around them like water, easy and meaningless. Talk of children and mortgages, of jobs and vacations, of the 1,000 small details that made up adult lives. Bennett navigated it all with the same effortless grace, his hand occasionally finding hers under the table, squeezing gently as if to say, I am here, you are doing great. Halfway through the meal, someone suggested going around the table and sharing their proudest accomplishment from the past 15 years. It was the kind of forced bonding exercise that made Meredith want to crawl under the table, but everyone seemed game. The answers were predictable. Promotions, degrees, children, marathons completed, houses purchased. When it came to Trevor, he stood up, pulling Cassidy to her feet beside him. Well, my proudest accomplishment is convincing this amazing woman to marry me, he said, his voice carrying across nearby tables. I spent a lot of years making dumb choices, dating the wrong people, not appreciating what was right in front of me. But 5 years ago, I finally got smart. Cassidy is my best friend, my partner, my everything. I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with her. It should have hurt. Meredith waited for the pain, for the old wound to tear open fresh and bleeding. But instead, she just felt tired. Tired of carrying this resentment, tired of letting 2 people who had clearly moved on occupy so much space in her head. When it was her turn, Meredith stood on shaky legs. My proudest accomplishment is learning to build a life that makes me happy, rather than a life that looks impressive to other people, she said quietly. I have a small business that I love, a cat who tolerates me, and friends who show up when it matters. I stopped measuring my worth by other people's standards. That took a long time, but it was worth it. Bennett looked up at her with something in his eyes that made her breath catch. When she sat down, he leaned close and whispered, That was brave. And true? How do you know it was true? She whispered back, Because I watched your face when you said it. You meant every word. The evening progressed through dessert and dancing. The DJ played songs from their high school years, soundtrack of late 90s and early 2000s pop that sent waves of nostalgia through the room. Bennett proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, leading her through a swing number that left them both laughing and breathless. It was during a slow song. With her head resting against his shoulder and his arms solid around her waist, that Meredith realized she had stopped pretending. Somewhere between the introductions and the dinner conversation and the dancing, this had stopped being a performance. The way Bennett held her felt real. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at her felt real. The connection humming between them felt so real, it terrified her. This is weird, right? She murmured against his shoulder. This feels weird. Define weird, Bennett said, his voice rumbling through his chest. Like we are not pretending anymore. Like this is actually something. Bennett was quiet for a long moment, his hand tracing slow circles on her back. Would that be such a bad thing? Before Meredith could answer, before she could figure out what she even wanted to say, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, the sound of someone crying. The music stuttered to a stop as everyone turned to look. Cassidy stood near the doorway, her face pale and streaked with mascara. Trevor was trying to put his arm around her, but she shook him off violently. Do not touch me, her voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Do not you dare touch me right now. Jennifer Ortiz, ever the class president, hurried over to intervene. There was a hushed conversation, and then Jennifer was addressing the room. Sorry for the interruption, everyone. Just a small emergency. Please continue enjoying yourselves." But Cassidy was already pushing past her, heading toward the restrooms. Without thinking, Meredith found herself following. Bennett caught her hand. "Are you sure?" "I have too," Meredith said, not entirely sure why that was true. Just knowing that it was. The bathroom was all marble and gold fixtures, aggressively elegant. Cassidy stood at the sink, gripping the counter so hard her knuckles were white. When she saw Meredith's reflection in the mirror, she laughed bitterly. Of course it would be you. What happened?" Meredith asked gently. "Nothing. Everything. I do not even know anymore." Cassidy turned, her perfect makeup ruined, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "He has been cheating on me. For 6 months. I just found out tonight. Some girl from his office sent me screenshots of their messages. Can you believe that? She sent them to me at my high school reunion." Meredith felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Sympathy, vindication, sadness, anger. "I am so sorry, Cassidy. That is awful." "Do not," Cassidy said sharply. "Do not be nice to me. I do not deserve nice. I stole your boyfriend 15 years ago, and now karma has come back to kick my ass." "You did not steal him," Meredith said, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. "He made a choice. You both did. And yeah, it sucked, and it hurt, but we were kids. Teenagers making teenager mistakes." Cassidy's face crumpled. "I missed you," she whispered. "All these years, I missed my best friend, and I was too proud and too ashamed to ever say it. And now here you are, with your perfect husband and your authentic life. And I am standing here in a designer dress with a ring from a man who does not even respect me enough to be faithful." "My husband is not perfect," Meredith admitted. "He is not even really my husband. I hired him. Well, not hired. Asked him. I asked a complete stranger to pretend to be my husband because I was too insecure to face you and Trevor alone." Cassidy stared at her, shock replacing the tears. "What?" "I met him in the lobby an hour before this thing started. His name is Bennett Cole, and he is probably some kind of con artist or serial killer. And I am definitely going to end up on a true crime podcast. But he was there, and I was desperate. And here we are." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Cassidy started to laugh. A real laugh. The kind Meredith remembered from sleepovers and study sessions and afternoons spent doing absolutely nothing. "That is insane," Cassidy gasped between laughs. "That is the most insane thing I have ever heard. And somehow it makes me feel better about my disaster of a life." "Glad my bad decisions could help," Meredith said, but she was smiling too. Cassidy sobered, wiping at her eyes. "He really seems to care about you, though. The way he looks at you. That is not fake." "We just met," Meredith protested weakly. "So, sometimes you just know. Sometimes you meet someone, and something clicks, and all the timing and logic and reasonable thinking goes out the window." Cassidy's voice turned wistful. "That is how it was supposed to be with Trevor and me. That is what I told myself anyway. That the connection was so strong it justified everything else. But I think maybe I was just trying to make a wrong thing feel right." "What are you going to do?" Meredith asked. "End it, obviously. Call off the wedding, give back the ring, probably move to a different city because Charleston suddenly feels way too small." Cassidy met her eyes in the mirror. "What about you? What are you going to do about your fake husband who looks at you like you hung the moon?" "I have no idea," Meredith admitted. "Well, figure it out fast," Cassidy advised. "Because guys like that do not come along often. I know from experience what happens when you let the good ones slip away." They stood there for another moment. Two women who had been girls together, who had shared and lost and hurt each other, connected by the strange threads of history and circumstance. Then Cassidy straightened her shoulders, fixed her makeup as best she could, and walked back out into the reception hall with her head high. Meredith followed a moment later, searching the crowd for Bennett. She found him standing near the windows, looking out at the harbor lights, his profile thoughtful and slightly sad. She walked over, and he turned as she approached, his expression warming. "Is she okay?" he asked. "Not really. but she will be. Meredith took a breath. I told her the truth. About us. About this being fake. Bennett's expression shifted, something guarded entering his eyes. And how did that feel? Freeing, Meredith said honestly. And terrifying. Because the thing is, Bennett, it does not feel fake anymore. At least not to me. And I do not know what to do with that. He was quiet for a long moment, and Meredith felt her heart sinking. Of course. He had been doing her a favor, playing a role, and she had gone and caught real feelings like some romantic comedy cliché. She was about to make a joke, to laugh it off and thank him for his time when he spoke. My full name is Bennett Cole Harrington, he said quietly. I am the CEO of Harrington Technologies. You can look us up. We do software solutions for enterprise companies. Last year, we were valued at $3.2 billion. I was at this hotel for a board meeting, trying to have a quiet afternoon before flying back to San Francisco. And then you walked up to me with the most ridiculous, brave, desperate proposal I had ever heard. Meredith felt her mind racing, trying to process the information. Harrington Technologies. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. You are a billionaire. Technically, on paper, yes. Though most of it is tied up in company stock, and I do not actually have billions sitting in a checking account. He ran a hand through his hair, looking vulnerable in a way he had not all evening. I said yes to your insane plan because 5 years ago I went through something similar. But also because there was something about you. Something real and honest and beautifully imperfect. And then I spent the evening with you, and every minute made it clearer that I did not want this to be pretend. Why did not you tell me who you were? Meredith asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because people treat me differently when they know. They see the money and the company and the reputation, and they stop seeing me. You saw me? Just Bennett, the guy willing to play along with your scheme. And for a few hours, I got to be just a person, not a CEO or a net worth or a business strategy. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to cup her cheek. I do not want to go back to being strangers, Meredith. I do not want this night to end and never see you again. I live in Asheville, she said, her practical side making one last stand. You live in San Francisco? I design logos for animal shelters. You run a billion-dollar tech company. This is crazy. It's completely insane, Bennett agreed. Absolutely illogical. His thumb traced along her cheekbone, and Meredith felt herself leaning into the touch. Want to be crazy together and see what happens? Meredith thought about all the reasonable objections, all the ways this could go wrong, all the sensible reasons to thank him for a lovely evening and walk away. Then she thought about how he had held her hand through dinner, how he had made her laugh, how he had seen value in her work when others dismissed it, how he had looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. Yes, she said. Yes, I really do. Bennett smiled, that same genuine smile that had convinced her to trust him in the first place, and then he was kissing her. Not for show, not for the benefit of any watching classmates, but for them. The kiss was soft and searching, full of promise and possibility. The kind of kiss that felt like the beginning of something rather than the end, when they finally pulled apart. Meredith was dimly aware of applause, of Jennifer Ortiz cheering loudly, of the entire reunion having apparently witnessed their moment. She should have been embarrassed. Instead, she just laughed. Want to get out of here? Bennett asked. More than anything, Meredith replied. They walked out of the reception hall hand in hand, leaving behind the ghosts of high school and the weight of old insecurities. As they crossed the lobby where they had met just a few hours earlier, Meredith realized that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. From desperate proposals to strangers, from performances that turned real, from having the courage to be vulnerable with someone who saw you for who you actually were. So what now? She asked as they stepped out into the warm Charleston night. Bennett grinned. Now we figure it out as we go. Together. And somehow impossibly. That felt like exactly the right answer. The Charleston night wrapped around them like silk. Warm and gentle with the promise of summer storms in the distance, Meredith and Bennett stood on the hotel steps, the sounds of the reunion fading behind them, replaced by the distant call of boat horns from the harbor and the rustle of palmetto trees in the breeze. The spell of the evening hung between them, fragile and electric, and neither seemed quite ready to break it. "I should probably tell you that I Googled you," Meredith admitted, holding up her phone with a sheepish expression. "While you were saying goodbye to Jennifer?" Harrington Technologies. Forbes 30 under 30, which is impressive considering you are clearly over 30 now. Multiple articles about innovation in enterprise software, which I will pretend to understand. And about 6 million photos of you at various tech conferences and charity galas. Bennett winced slightly. "And now you are regretting not asking for that $200? "Actually, I am regretting not asking for more," Meredith said, but she was smiling. "Though mostly I am trying to figure out how I missed the signs. The watch alone probably costs more than my car. And you have that thing that wealthy people have. That confidence that comes from never having to worry about whether your credit card will decline at the grocery store." "I grew up middle class," Bennett said, leading her down the steps toward the waterfront path. "My dad was a high school math teacher. My mom worked at the library. The money is relatively recent, maybe 8 years old. And honestly, most days it still does not feel real. I keep expecting someone to show up and tell me there has been a mistake, that I need to give it all back and return to my studio apartment in Cambridge." They walked in silence for a moment, their shoes clicking against the brick pathway. The harbor stretched out beside them, dark water reflecting the lights from the marina like scattered stars. Meredith found herself thinking about the gulf between their lives, the practical impossibilities of what they were attempting. But then Bennett's hand found hers again, warm and solid, and the impossibilities seemed less important. "Tell me about the company," Meredith said. "I read the Wikipedia page, but I want to hear it from you. How does a math teacher's son end up running a billion-dollar tech company?" Bennett laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "The short version. I was good at computer science in college, got into MIT for graduate school, started tinkering with some software solutions for a problem I noticed while doing consulting work. Basically, most companies were terrible at managing their internal communication and project workflows. Everything was fragmented across different platforms, and nothing talked to anything else." "Sounds frustrating," Meredith said, though honestly most of it was going over her head. "It was a nightmare. So I built something better. Started small, just a tool for project management that actually made sense. Then I added features for communication, document sharing, analytics. Made it intuitive enough that people did not need a training manual to use it. Launched it as a startup with 2 friends from grad school, and somehow it caught on. Companies started buying licenses. Then bigger companies. Then Fortune 500 companies. 3 years ago, we went public, and suddenly, I was a billionaire on paper, which is still the weirdest sentence I have ever said out loud." "Do you like it?" Meredith asked. "Running the company, being the CEO, all of it?" Bennett was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes. I like solving problems. I like building things that make people's lives easier. I like working with smart people who push me to think differently." He paused. "But the rest of it? The board meetings and the media appearances and the constant pressure to grow bigger and faster, that part I could do without. And the loneliness. That is the thing nobody warns you about. The higher you climb, the smaller your circle gets. Everyone wants something from you, and it becomes impossible to tell who actually cares about you versus who cares about what you can do for them. Is that why your engagement ended?" Meredith asked gently. "If you do not mind me asking," her name was Rachel. "We met before the company took off, back when I was still just a guy with an idea and a lot of student debt. She was great, smart, and funny, and supportive. We got engaged right after the Series B funding, and I thought we were solid." Bennett's jaw tightened slightly. "Turns out she was already planning her exit strategy. She waited until after the IPO, until my net worth hit a certain number, and then she filed for divorce. Well, technically we were not married yet, but she sued for breach of promise and settled for about $40 million. Her lawyer argued she had sacrificed her own career to support mine during the early days, which was partially true, but mostly it was just about the money." "That is awful," Meredith said, squeezing his hand. "I am sorry." It taught me to be more careful, more guarded. He looked at her, his gray eyes catching the lamplight. Which is why tonight was so strange. I should not have agreed to your plan. I should have politely declined and gone back to my newspaper. But something about you made me want to say yes. Made me want to help. Made me want to spend time with someone who asked me to pretend to be her husband without having any idea who I actually was. They had reached a small park overlooking the water, complete with wrought iron benches and ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. Bennett guided them to a bench, and they sat close together, their thighs touching, neither quite willing to break the physical connection that had been building all evening. "Can I ask you something?" Meredith said. "And I want you to be honest." "Always," Bennett promised. "If I had known who you were from the beginning, would you have helped me? Or would you have assumed I was just another person trying to use you?" Bennett considered this carefully. "Honestly, I probably would have said no. I would have assumed it was some elaborate setup, that you were going to sell your story to a tabloid or use it for blackmail or something. The money makes you paranoid. You start seeing angles everywhere, even when there are not any. But you know now that I did not know, and I still asked you anyway, and it all turned out okay," Meredith pointed out. "Better than okay," Bennett corrected. He shifted to face her more fully, his expression serious. "Meredith, I need you to understand something. This thing between us, whatever it is going to be complicated. There will be media attention once people find out. There will be speculation about your motives, about whether you are with me for money. People will dig into your past, critique your appearance, make up stories. It is invasive and ugly, and I hate that I am warning you about it. But you deserve to know what you are signing up for." Meredith felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "That sounds terrible," it is, Bennett agreed. "Which is why I will completely understand if you want to call this whole thing off right now. We can exchange numbers, maybe talk on the phone sometimes, keep it casual and private. No pressure, no complications. Is that what you want?" Meredith asked. "Not even a little bit," Bennett admitted. "What I want is to take you to dinner tomorrow night. And the night after that, I want to fly to Asheville and meet Hemingway the cat and see your studio. I want to introduce you to my sister and hear more of your stories and figure out if this connection we both feel can survive the transition from fantasy to reality. But I also want you to make that choice with your eyes open. Knowing what it might cost you." Meredith thought about her quiet life in Asheville, her small circle of friends, her anonymous existence where she could go to the grocery store without anyone caring. She thought about how hard she had worked to build a sense of self-worth that did not depend on external validation. How much therapy it had taken to get to a place where she genuinely liked herself. Inviting media scrutiny and public judgment seemed like asking to undo all that progress. But she also thought about how Bennett had looked at her tonight. Not at a performance or a persona, but at her. Messy, anxious, stress-baking her. The her who carried old wounds and new hopes in equal measure. The her who was brave enough to ask a stranger for help and honest enough to admit when something scared her. "I need to tell you something too," Meredith said finally, "and I need you to really hear it. I am not Rachel. I do not want your money. In fact, your money kind of terrifies me because I do not know how to exist in that world. I have never flown first class. I shop at thrift stores. My idea of a fancy dinner is anywhere that does not have paper napkins. We come from completely different universes," Kay Bennett said carefully. "But," Meredith continued, "I really like you. The you I met tonight, who was kind enough to help a desperate stranger, who danced with me and held my hand and made me feel like I mattered. That you I want to get to know better. Not CEO Bennett, who runs board meetings and appears in Forbes. Just Bennett, who cries at his own wedding and cannot cook and likes terrible 80s action movies. If there is a way for me to date that Bennett while somehow managing all the complications that come with the other Bennett, then I want to try. But I need you to believe that I mean that I am here for the right reasons." Bennett was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I am going to do something I have never done with anyone outside my immediate family and closest friends," he said. He pulled up his banking app, unlocked it with his fingerprint, and handed her the phone. Here, look at everything. See the numbers. See what is real. I want there to be no secrets, no surprises. Know what you are potentially getting into. Meredith took the phone hesitantly, glancing at the screen. The numbers were staggering, almost absurd. Multiple accounts with balances that had more zeros than she could quickly process. Investment portfolios, real estate holdings, stock options. It was the kind of wealth that existed in a different dimension from her lived experience. This is obscene, she said finally, handing the phone back. It is, Bennett agreed. I try to give a lot of it away. Scholarships for underprivileged kids studying computer science. Grants for teachers because of my dad. Climate change initiatives. Even then, it keeps growing faster than I can donate it. The system is broken in a lot of ways. So fix it, Meredith said simply. You are smart and successful and apparently have ridiculous amounts of money. Use it to actually change things instead of just feeling guilty about it. Bennett blinked, surprised. That simple? Probably not, Meredith admitted. But wallowing in guilt about having privilege does not help anyone. Action helps. What would your dad want you to do with all this? He would want me to make sure other kids got the same chance as I did, Bennett said slowly. He used to say that education was the great equalizer. That if you could give someone the tools to learn, they could build their own future. So do that, Meredith said. Build schools. Fund programs. Make your ridiculous fortune mean something beyond just a number in a bank account. Bennett looked at her with something that might have been awe. You are absolutely right. How did you just solve my existential crisis in under 2 minutes? External perspective, Meredith said with a small smile. Sometimes you need someone who is not drowning in the problem to point out the obvious solutions. Plus, I've spent a lot of time thinking about purpose and meaning and how to build a life that feels worthwhile. Turns out those questions do not care how much money you have. Will you help me? Bennett asked suddenly. Not with the business stuff. I have people for that. But with figuring out how to use the resources for actual good? You understand nonprofits? You work with organizations trying to make a difference. I need someone who can help me see past the spreadsheets and tax advantages to what actually matters. I barely know you, Meredith protested. You should not be offering me that kind of responsibility based on one evening. I know, Bennett said. But I also know that in the past 4 hours, you have seen me more clearly than people I have known for years. You did not see my net worth or my company. You saw me. And I trust that. I trust you. Meredith felt tears prickling at her eyes, overwhelmed by the sudden weight of his faith in her. The possibility of what he was offering, the terrifying leap they were both considering. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, Bennett agreed, echoing their earlier conversation. Want to be crazy together? Yes, Meredith said, and then she was kissing him again. Slower this time, deeper. Tasting the promise of something real and complicated and potentially wonderful. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Bennett rested his forehead against hers. I have a confession, he murmured. Another one? Meredith asked, her heart racing. I booked a room here at the hotel for tonight. I was supposed to fly back to San Francisco tomorrow morning, but I can cancel that flight. Stay with me. Not in a weird way, he added quickly. Just stay. Talk more. Order room service at midnight. Watch terrible movies. Let me prove that this is not just reunion magic, that it can survive past tonight. Meredith knew she should say no. Should be sensible and careful and protect her heart from potential disaster. Should go back to her own hotel room, drive back to Asheville tomorrow. Maybe text him in a few days after they had both had time to think clearly without the champagne and emotion clouding their judgment. Instead, she said yes. The hotel room was enormous, more of a suite really. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor and furniture that probably cost more than Meredith's annual rent, Bennett immediately dimmed the lights, ordered a ridiculous amount of room service, and pulled up a movie from the 80s on the television. Just as he had promised, they sat on the couch. Meredith curled against his side and talked about everything and nothing. About her childhood in Charleston, growing up as an only child with parents who loved her but never quite understood her artistic temperament. About his years at MIT, the pressure and excitement of building something from scratch. The strange vertigo of sudden success. About dreams deferred and paths not taken, and all the small choices that had led them both to this hotel lobby on this particular evening. Somewhere around 2 in the morning. After they had demolished most of the room service and watched 2 movies, Meredith found herself getting serious again. "What happens on Monday?" she asked quietly. "When you go back to San Francisco and I go back to Asheville and real life reasserts itself." "We figure it out," Bennett said. "I can work from anywhere with decent internet. Asheville is beautiful. I could spend some time there. And you could visit San Francisco. Meet my sister, see the office. Let me take you to this amazing dim sum place in Chinatown." "Long-distance relationships are hard," Meredith said. "Everything worthwhile is hard," Bennett countered. "Building a business is hard. Creating art is hard. Healing from past hurts is hard. None of that means we should not try. When did you get so wise?" Meredith teased. "I think it happened around the time a beautiful woman walked up to me and asked me to be her fake husband. Really shifted my perspective on life." They dozed eventually, still on the couch, wrapped around each other, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. When Meredith woke to early morning light streaming through the windows, she had a moment of panic, wondering if she had dreamed the whole thing. Then Bennett stirred beside her, blinking awake, and smiled at her with such genuine warmth that her panic evaporated.